The rain fell in thick, shimmering sheets across the neon-drenched streets of Kestrim Prime. The city pulsed with life, vendors hawking bioengineered delicacies, mercenaries slouched in the shadows of towering spires, and hollow displays screaming out promises of pleasure, power, or both. It was the kind of place where fortunes were made and lost in the same breath. Garan Drex knew this better than anyone. He was a trader of rare goods, a broker of the unusual, and sometimes, if the price was right, a seller of living things. But never before had he sold something like her. She was curled up on the worn synth leather of his passenger seat, small and delicate, her bioluminescent fur shifting between shades of silver and violet. Her ears twitched, large and expressive, and her tail, striped with bands of iridescent blue, flicked lazily as she dreamed. She was a Felidara, one of the last of her kind, an alien species nearly wiped out in the expansion wars. But to Garan, she was more than just a rarity. She was his. Ava. That was the name he had given her when he'd found her, just a terrified little thing scavenging in the wreckage of a battlefield. She had been barely more than a bundle of fur and bones, eyes too large for her face, watching him with a wariness that had slowly, painfully, turned into trust. Now, years later, she was no longer a frightened creature hiding in the dark corners of a ship. She spoke in her soft, musical voice, with a fluency that sometimes made him forget she wasn't human. She laughed at his jokes, snuck rations from his stores, and curled up next to him on long flights, purring softly in her sleep. She was family. And yet, now, here he was, waiting for a buyer. Garan stared out at the rain-soaked streets, his gut twisting in a way he didn't like. The deal was simple. A human soldier, someone high-ranking and powerful, had offered an obscene amount of credits for her. More money than Garan had ever seen. Enough to buy his freedom from the debts that clung to him like a parasite. But the thought of handing her over made his skin crawl. Ava stirred, stretching with feline grace before blinking up at him with those bright, too knowing eyes. "You're thinking too loud," she murmured. Garan forced a smirk. "Maybe you're just too nosy." She flicked her tail, unimpressed. "What's wrong?" He hesitated. Lied. "Nothing. Just another job." Ava's ears flattened slightly, but she didn't press. She never did. She trusted him. And that, more than anything, made him feel like the lowest kind of bastard. Outside, the rain continued to fall, and across the city, his buyer was waiting. Waiting for him to make a choice. Garan kept his hands steady on the controls as a speeder wove through the labyrinthine streets of Kestrim Prime. The city hummed around him, lights flickering against the rain-soaked pavement, the distant thrum of anti-grav engines, and the muffled voices of traders haggling in dark alleys. Ava sat beside him, her tail curled around her legs, watching the neon glow of the city blur past. She was quiet, but he knew she was thinking. She always was. "Where are we going?" she asked, tilting her head in that way she did when she sensed something off. Garan didn't answer right away. He couldn't. The buyer, Captain Elias Vrin of the Terran Dominion, was waiting at Dock 7, one of the more secure trading ports in Kestrim Prime. He was ex-military, the kind of man who carried the weight of battle on his shoulders like a second skin. He wanted Ava. He wanted her badly enough to offer an amount of credits that Garan had almost laughed at when he first saw the message. But it wasn't funny now. "We're meeting someone," Garan said finally. Ava's ears twitched. "Someone dangerous?" He exhaled through his nose, debating how much to tell her. "Potentially." Ava made a sound, something between a purr and a scoff. "Then I hope you're charging extra." He didn't reply. The speeder pulled up to the docking platform, settling with a low hum as the rain drummed against the metal surface. Garan cut the engine and forced himself to unclench his hands from the controls. Ava was already watching him. "Something's wrong," she said, her voice softer now. "I can feel it. Damn it." He hated that about her. Hated how easily she could read him. Garan reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, wrapped package, a ration bar, one of her favorites. He handed it to her, forcing a grin. "Eat something. You always think clearer when you're not hungry." Ava narrowed her eyes, but took it. He stepped out of the speeder before she could press further. Dock 7 was dimly lit, the artificial lighting struggling against the thick sheets of rain. A lone figure stood beneath a flickering hollow sign, his broad frame barely concealed beneath a long military coat. Even from a distance, Garan could see the way he held himself, rigid, controlled, dangerous. Captain Elias Vren. Garan approached, forcing himself to move casually. "You're early." Vren barely acknowledged him. "You have the girl?" The words made Garen's stomach twist, but he nodded. "She's in the speeder." Vren exhaled slowly, scanning the vehicle, then turned back to Garan. "Tell me, Drex, do you have any idea what she is?" Garan stiffened. "She's a Felidara. Rare, intelligent, expensive." He shrugged, playing indifferent. "Nothing else matters to me." Vren's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "That's where you're wrong." Garan didn't like the way he said that. "Enlighten me," he said, keeping his tone light. Vren took a step closer. "She's not just rare. She's unique. One of a handful left in existence. And you've been sitting on a secret you don't even understand." Garen's mind raced. This wasn't how these deals went. Buyers didn't talk this much. They didn't ask questions. They paid, took what they came for, and left. Vren continued, voice measured. "The Dominion has been looking for Felidara survivors for years. Not for study, not for conservation." His eyes locked onto Garen's. "For war." A chill ran down Garen's spine. Vren glanced toward the speeder. "She doesn't know, does she?" Garan clenched his jaw. "Know what?" Vren's smirk returned. "That she's worth more than money. That the right hands could turn her into something far deadlier than she looks." The realization hit like a punch to the gut. Garan had thought he was selling a rare companion, an exotic pet for a rich collector. But Vren wasn't here for that. Vren was here for a weapon. Garen's hands twitched toward his belt, where a concealed blade rested. "The deal's changed," he said, voice tight. "I don't sell people." Vren chuckled, low and amused. "Then you should have read the fine print, Drex." Before Garan could react, the captain's men stepped out of the shadows. 3 of them, all armed, weapons trained on him. Ava was still in the speeder, still waiting. And Garan realized with sudden, suffocating dread, this was never just a sale. This was a trap. Garen's mind raced. 3 guns, 3 soldiers, 1 captain. He'd been in bad spots before, but this one was different. This wasn't some low-level deal gone wrong. This was a Dominion operation. Planned, coordinated, and Ava was still in the speeder, unaware. Garan kept his hands loose at his sides, shifting his weight just slightly. "This wasn't the deal, Vren." Vren's smirk didn't waver. "No, Drex. The deal was that you walk away richer than you've ever been. The deal is still on the table, so long as you step aside." Garan forced himself to breathe evenly. If they wanted Ava, they needed him to cooperate, at least for now. That meant he had time. A few seconds, maybe, but time. He needed to stall. "So she's some kind of military asset," he said, tilting his head. "That why you want her?" Vren raised an eyebrow. "You don't know what she is?" Garan said nothing. The captain let out a slow breath, like a man deciding whether or not to share a secret. Then he stepped closer. "The Felidara were not just another species," he said. "They were engineered. Long before humanity reached the stars, something designed them. Genetically perfected. They learn faster, adapt faster, survive longer. Some say they were meant to be the perfect soldiers." Garan swallowed hard. "You think you've been raising some rare pet?" Vren continued. "You've been sitting on one of the last known Felidara to exist, and the Dominion needs her." Garan clenched his jaw. "For what?" Vren smiled. "Reconstruction." The word sent a shiver down Garen's spine. The Dominion's military was rebuilding after a decade of brutal losses. He'd heard the rumors, experiments, conscription, forced augmentation. If Ava was what Vren said she was, then they wouldn't just train her. They'd break her, modify her, turn her into something unrecognizable. Garen's fingers twitched toward his concealed blade. He could take one of them, maybe 2, but not 4. Then, behind him, the speeder door opened. Ava stepped out, and she had heard everything. Her golden eyes locked onto Vren, then onto Garan. Something cold passed between them, something Garan couldn't place. Vren smiled. Ah, there she is. Ava's ears twitched, but she didn't run, didn't speak. She just stood there, still and silent in the rain. Garan knew that look. She was waiting, calculating. He had to give her an opening. Garan shifted his stance, just enough to signal her. Then he moved. In one fluid motion, he reached for his blade, ducking low as he drove it into the nearest soldier's leg. The man howled, collapsing. Gunfire erupted, wild, uncontrolled. Garan twisted, using the injured soldier as cover. And then Ava moved. She wasn't just fast. She was impossible. One moment she was standing still. The next, she was on top of the second soldier, claws flashing. A blur of silver and shadow. The man barely had time to scream before she drove him into the ground. Vren cursed, drawing his own weapon. But Garan was already there. He slammed into the captain, driving him back against the speeder. The gun went off, too high. A flash of heat passed Garen's ear. He gritted his teeth, driving his knee into Vren's ribs. Ava was still fighting. The third soldier managed to land a hit, striking her across the face with the butt of his rifle. But she didn't go down. She twisted, tail snapping like a whip, knocking the weapon from his hands. Then, with terrifying precision, she slammed her claws into his throat. Silence. Garan turned back just in time to see Vren stagger, blood dripping from his nose. The captain's gun was still in his grip, but his hands trembled. Ava stepped closer. Vren exhaled. You don't understand, he rasped. She's dangerous. Garan didn't lower his blade. You're damn right she is. Ava tilted her head, looking down at Vren. Her expression was unreadable. For the first time, Garan wondered, had she known? Had she suspected what she was? Had she been waiting for this? Vren took a shaky step back, glancing at the bodies of his men. Then, he did something Garan didn't expect. He smiled. Go ahead, he said. Run. But the Dominion won't stop looking for her. Ava's ears flattened. They'll come, Vren continued, voice soft now. They'll come for you. And when they do, Ava lunged. Garan barely had time to register the movement. 1 second, Vren was speaking. The next, Ava had him pinned, her claws pressed against his throat. The rain fell in heavy sheets, hissing against the metal. Garan held his breath. Ava's golden eyes burned. Her claws trembled just slightly. Then, after a long, silent moment, she pulled away. Vren exhaled sharply, gasping. Garan didn't give him time to recover. He grabbed Ava's arm, yanked her toward the speeder. We need to go, he said, voice tight. She didn't argue. They climbed into the vehicle, the engine roaring to life as Garan gunned it forward. Behind them, Vren was still kneeling in the rain, watching them disappear into the city. Watching, waiting. And Garan knew this wasn't over. Not even close. The city blurred past in streaks of neon and shadow as Garan pushed the speeder to its limits. His hands gripped the controls so tightly his knuckles turned white. Beside him, Ava sat still, her golden eyes unreadable. The rain smeared across the windshield, washing away the blood, but not the weight pressing down on Garen's chest. The Dominion wouldn't stop. He'd spent his life outrunning bad decisions. Smuggling, dealing, surviving. He'd always found a way to slip through the cracks. But this wasn't a deal gone wrong. This wasn't some local gang after a cut. This was bigger than him. Bigger than both of them. His mind replayed the fight over and over. The way Ava had moved. The way she had almost killed Vren. Garan had seen killers before. Had worked with them. Had fought against them. Ava wasn't like them. She was something else. He had to get her off-world. Somewhere the Dominion couldn't track her. He knew a few names, a few places that might still be safe. But Ava had other ideas. We should have killed him, she said suddenly. Garan exhaled sharply. He kept his eyes on the road. You don't mean that? Ava's tail flicked, curling around her legs. He knows what I am now. He knew before. But now he's seen it. She looked at him. And so have you. Garan tightened his grip on the controls. I don't care what you are, Ava. You're not one of them. She let out a quiet sound, half laugh, half sigh. Aren't I? Garan didn't answer, because he didn't know. Something had awakened in her during that fight. Something she hadn't even known she possessed. and it scared him, not because he thought she was dangerous, but because he wasn't sure she'd ever be able to go back to the way she was before. The speeder swerved onto a side street, cutting through the industrial sector. Garin had a contact here, an old friend who specialized in getting people off-world. But as soon as they reached the rendezvous point, his gut told him something was wrong. Too quiet. Too empty. Ava felt it too. She tensed beside him, ears twitching. Her claws flexed against the seat. Garin killed the engine. "Stay close," he murmured. She nodded. They moved carefully, stepping into the shadows between the warehouses. Rain dripped from rusted beams, hissing as it hit exposed power lines. Garin scanned the area, searching for movement. Then he saw it. A single figure stood in the distance, silhouetted by the city lights. A woman. Garin's heart sank. Not just any woman. Lieutenant Karis Vale, Dominion's Special Recon. And she wasn't alone. Lights flickered on across the rooftops. Snipers. More soldiers stepping out from the alleys, weapons raised. A trap. Garin's mind raced. There were too many of them. Even if he and Ava fought, they wouldn't make it out. Vale smiled, stepping forward. She was tall, armored, her black uniform pristine despite the rain. "You didn't really think you could run, did you?" Ava bristled beside him. Vale turned her gaze toward her. "Hello, little Felidara. We've been looking for you for a long time." Ava said nothing. Garin clenched his jaw. "Let her go." Vale raised an eyebrow. "Oh, now you care." She smirked. "I heard about your little deal with Fren. Thought you were happy to sell her to the highest bidder." Ava's ears flattened. Garin felt her stiffen. Vale leaned in. "Tell me, Drex, how much was she worth?" Garin's pulse pounded. He had no answer. Ava's claws flexed. "You should leave," she said, her voice low. Vale laughed. "Oh, I like you. A little fighter, huh?" She turned, waving a hand. "Restrain them." The soldiers moved. Ava moved faster. Lightning fast, she lunged straight for Vale. The lieutenant barely had time to react before Ava's claws raked across her armor, sending sparks flying. The soldiers hesitated for half a second, just long enough for Garin to strike. He grabbed the closest one, slamming his elbow into the man's throat. Stole his gun, turned, fired. The alley exploded into chaos. Ava tore through the ranks like a shadow, her body a blur of movement. She wasn't just fighting, she was hunting. Garin kept close, covering her flank. He took down 2 more soldiers before a bolt of plasma grazed his shoulder, sending pain searing through his arm. Vale recovered fast. Too fast. She grabbed Ava mid-motion, slamming her into the ground with a sickening crack. Ava gasped, then snarled, twisting free. But Vale was already on her, striking hard and fast. A soldier through and through. Garin fired, once, twice, but Vale dodged both shots, closing the distance. She kicked the gun from his hands, driving a knee into his ribs. He collapsed, gasping for air. Ava tried to get to him, but the soldiers were closing in. Too many. Even she couldn't fight forever. Vale loomed over them, breathing hard. A thin line of blood ran down her cheek from Ava's strike, but she looked pleased. "You don't get it, do you?" she said. "She belongs to us." Ava's golden eyes burned. Garin struggled to move, but the soldiers had him pinned. Vale knelt beside Ava, grabbing her chin roughly. "We're not going to kill you," she said softly. "We're going to use you. You're going to serve the Dominion. And there's nothing you can do to stop it." Ava's body trembled, not with fear, with fury. And then, she stopped fighting. Garin's breath caught. Ava went still, completely, unnaturally still. And then, she smiled. A slow, knowing smile. "You think you've won," she whispered. Vale frowned. Ava's pupils narrowed. And suddenly, every light in the city flickered. For a brief, terrifying second, the entire industrial sector plunged into darkness. And then something answered. A deep, resonant hum. A frequency that rattled Garin's bones. Ava exhaled, her breath curling like mist in the rain. "You made a mistake," she whispered. Vale's eyes widened. "What did you?" The world exploded. Something massive roared to life. Buildings shook. Power surged. And from the depths of the city, something ancient awoke. Ava had called something, and it was coming. Vale cursed, scrambling back. "Fall back," she shouted. But it was too late. Because the hunt had just begun. The city trembled. Garan felt it in his bones. A low, resonant hum that vibrated through steel and stone, rattling the ground beneath him. The air itself crackled with energy, charged with something ancient, something powerful. Ava stood in the center of it all, her golden eyes glowing like twin embers in the darkness. "You feel that?" she whispered, barely audible over the rising storm of sound. Vale did. The Dominion officer had taken a step back, her grip on her weapon tightening. Her soldiers wavered, confusion flickering across their faces. For the first time since this confrontation had begun, doubt seeped into Vale's carefully controlled expression. "What did you do?" she demanded. Ava exhaled, slow and measured. "I stopped holding back." And then the ground split. A fissure tore through the pavement beneath them, black veins of energy racing outward from Ava's feet. The buildings around them groaned, lights flickering wildly. Garan struggled to his knees, his ribs aching, but his eyes remained locked on Ava. He didn't know what was happening, didn't know what she was. But he knew one thing: she wasn't losing. "Fall back," Vale barked, but her words were swallowed by a deafening roar. From the shadows of the industrial sector, something enormous moved. Garan barely had time to register the shape. Towering, skeletal, pulsing with the same energy that radiated from Ava. It was a construct, ancient and forgotten, buried beneath the city for who knew how long. A remnant of a war older than the Dominion itself. And Ava had called it. "That's not possible," Vale whispered. Ava turned to her, slow and deliberate. "You thought you understood me, that you could own me." Her claws flexed, black lightning sparking at her fingertips. "But you were wrong." The construct lunged. Metal screamed as it ripped through the street, a mass of shifting limbs and glowing sigils. The Dominion soldiers opened fire, but their weapons barely scratched its surface. The thing was too fast, too strong, tearing through their ranks with surgical precision. Vale cursed and fired at Ava. Ava didn't move. The bullet never reached her. The air between them shattered, a crack in reality itself, a ripple of unseen force that sent the projectile spinning harmlessly into the void. Garan had seen a lot in his life. Smugglers, warlords, syndicates. He'd seen plasma weapons that could carve through battleships and genetic enhancements that turned soldiers into monsters. But this was something else. Ava was something else. Vale must have realized it too, because she ran. Not in a tactical retreat, not in a calculated withdrawal. She turned and ran. Her remaining soldiers followed, scrambling over rubble, desperate to escape the carnage. The construct did not chase them. It had no interest in prey that fled, only in the one who had called it. Ava turned to face it. For a moment, Garan thought it would strike her down, just as it had the soldiers. It towered over her, massive and unknowable. And then it knelt. Ava tilted her head, her expression unreadable. She stepped forward, placing a hand against the creature's surface. Black veins of energy pulsed between them, some silent understanding passing in the space between them. Garan struggled to his feet. "Ava!" She turned to him, and he saw it. Something in her had changed. Not just her power, not just her control. She knew now who she was, what she was. And the Dominion? They would never stop coming. She looked at him, quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. "I told you," she murmured. "I stopped holding back." Garan exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "So what now?" Ava turned back to the construct, her golden eyes gleaming. "Now," she said. She flexed her claws. "Now we hunt." The Dominion never recovered from what happened that night. The industrial sector of Varos. 9 was left in ruins, gutted by the sheer force of Ava's unleashed power. The surviving Dominion forces limped away, carrying tales of a weapon they could not control, a force they did not understand. Ava and Garan disappeared into the void. At first, the Dominion tried to spin it. They claimed it was a localized rebellion, a security breach, an overreaction to a rogue smuggler. But the truth slipped through the cracks, whispered from station to station, world to world. A name began to spread. Not Garen's, Not the Dominions. Ava. Some said she was a ghost, a myth, an experiment gone wrong. Others swore they had seen her in the outer systems, walking among the forgotten, leading an army that did not breathe, did not sleep, did not fall. The Dominion declared her a Class 1 threat. Bounties were posted. Hunters sent. None returned. And Garan? He stayed by her side. At first, he told himself it was because of guilt, because he had sold her, because he had been blind to what she was, what she had always been. But as the months passed, he realized it was something else. She wasn't his prisoner. She wasn't his pet. She wasn't even the frightened girl he had once cradled in his arms, whispering reassurances in the dead of night. She was something greater, and she had chosen him. The war did not happen all at once. It started in whispers. Ships that vanished, outposts that flickered offline, Dominion officers found turned to glass, frozen in expressions of terror. Then the sightings began. A girl with golden eyes, standing atop the wreckage of a fallen cruiser, black lightning curling around her fingers. A shadow passing through the deep void, her presence turning the air itself to static, disrupting Dominion communications for days. The Dominion feared her, and for the first time in history, their empire trembled. Garan stood beside Ava as the first battle began. They had taken an old warship, stolen from the wreckage of a forgotten battle, refitted, reforged. Its hull was black as night, its engines humming with something beyond human science. She ran her claws along the console, and the ship responded. "It's time," she murmured. Garan took a breath. "You sure about this?" Ava had turned to him, and he swore the stars reflected in her eyes. "They took everything from me," she said softly. "Now, I take everything from them." And when she raised her hand, the fleet burned. Centuries passed. The Dominion was gone, shattered by a war they never understood. Ava had become legend. Some claimed she had ascended beyond flesh, a force that whispered through the dark between worlds. Others believed she had vanished, slipping away into the void, her mission complete. But one thing was certain. Her name remained, scrawled onto ruined walls, whispered in the dark corners of the galaxy. A warning, a promise, a legend, and beside it always another name. Not Garen's, not his alone, but human. Ava had been the spark, but humanity had been the fire. The ones who refused to bow, the ones who defied gods and empires alike. The ones who reminded the universe that to be human was to fight. To be human was to never stop. And so, across the stars, long after her story had faded into myth, one phrase remained. One whisper passed from world to world, a reminder of what had been. Human, don't stop. Search. Reason.